Yes. Yeah, thanks, Emily. Abby, I know we've talked a few days ago, but wanted to thank you for your time during this session. And I also wanted to thank our virtual audience for joining us for this chat today. Abby, when we talked earlier, I really loved your background. So I'd love to kick off things by finding out a bit more about you and what you've done. Because you have a deep and varied marketing and advertising background. And you're also a third generation realtor. So I think that's a great background, and it really comes in handy in your pivotal role at Remax in setting up a world-class marketing organization. Could you share a little bit more about your career, what got you here, and then also what you're responsible for at Remax today?
Sure. Yeah. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in a real estate family. Interestingly enough, it was my grandmother who was in real estate starting probably, in the mid 1950s, early 1960s. We lived outside of New York City, and my grandfather was a banker. And so my grandmother was one of those people who just was a go-getter and got into real estate because she loved relationships, and found that real estate was something that really connected her with the community. So she actually in the 70s started her own agency, her own brokerage with two of her friends. So it was three women. It was called Heck, Deegan, and Nash, and they called themselves the Hens, which was, they were in, which was always kind of funny to me. But she was in real estate for probably the span of 25, 30 years. And so I got a chance as I was younger to, visit with her, go on listing appointments, things like that, kind of get my foot into a little bit of just hearing about real estate. And then my mother got into real estate. So two of them both worked. That was in a different area outside of Philadelphia. But my mother did that for quite some time. Went to college and got actually an art history degree. Got out of college in 1993 when the job market was not so hot, and took a job at a media company called, at the time, Western International Media, which has now kind of progressed into Initiative Media and things like that, and started out my media buying career. So that just kind of gave me a lot of insights into media as a whole, different media planning, media buying, and that sort of thing. And as I got a little bit older, met my husband, moved out to Colorado, and wanted to start a family. And so took a position with Remax as a media buyer there, purchasing some regions. And over time, my husband both got his real estate license, and I got my real estate license as well, to kind of keep up that family tradition. But also, I very much wanted to understand the ins and outs of what one of my customers would go through during a real estate transaction. So, and just over time have kind of grown responsibilities, and now responsible for not just the media aspect of the advertising funds that we have, but the creative agency we have in-house, our editorial and communications team, both internal, external, and then both also responsible for the relationships with our various agencies.
That's great. I want to dig into more of your grandmother's background, and sort of the lessons you learned from her, because obviously your grandmother was a trailblazer, your mom was a trailblazer, and you're continuing tradition. It'd be great to hear, build out some of those lessons you've learned from both of them, as well as your career trajectory so far. Because I'm sure the audience would love to hear some of the things you've learned and you still lean on even today.
Well, and I would say today, in the greatest sense of the word, things that I took from my grandmother in her time in real estate have never proven more true than in the current environment today. And I think we talked about this a little bit, and that's relationships and communication, because real estate is such a relationship and emotional driven industry and transaction. And I watched my grandmother over the years, even she passed away in 2008. And I still remember visiting with her the Christmas before she passed away. And she was still both writing hundreds of Christmas cards to past clients and also receiving them. And she had been out of the business for oh gosh, at that point in time, probably close to 30 years she'd been out of the business, but still kept in touch because she helped people find their dreams, and they never forgot that. And they just, whether they were still in Chappaqua, New York, or had moved on to different areas. A great story that I have is one of her clients back in Chappaqua, New York, later moved to outside of Chicago. And I think you and I talked about this a little bit. And we moved to that same town outside of Chicago. And who was the first person that my parents called? It was my grandmother's past client who was now selling real estate. So we got to kind of, eternalize that relationship a little bit. But I think during this whole pandemic, and this will kind of lead into the strategy that we've had as a company for what we provide our agents and brokerages. But those relationships, people have been, as we all know, locked down in varying degrees for the last, 9, almost 10 months. And having that relationship and just really that check-in from somebody, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need from me? We've seen, obviously the residential real estate, which we all thought back in March was potentially going to have a great decline, has just continued to boost because people are making different changes than they may have 10 months ago. They're moving out of the urban areas, maybe upgrading to get a home office, things like that. But what we found is the agents who've been the most successful are not the ones that have been salesy, but the ones that have just gone out and said, what can I do for you? Is there anything your family needs? How are you doing emotionally? Is there, anything that we can help with at-home schooling or, anything like that, going for a walk, whatever it might be, obviously within safety constraints and all that kind of stuff. But that relationship is so still at the core of that real estate relationship, just as much as it was 30, 40 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you often talk about being empathetic in your marketing. And I think that's very important because people do want to feel that connection with brands. They want to make sure that their voice is heard. And so a lot of brands, I think we often talk about, it's not only about winning share of wallet, it's winning
Right.
share of mind.
Right.
And so from your perspective, what do you think brands need to do now in this time of disruption as well as into the future to really be more human and approachable? Because I think that's where everybody's pivoting to, and they want that resonance with brands, and they want to connect with the brands that have that human touch and provide that human experience.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I would say, it's kind of interesting because a lot of brands interact, doesn't matter what industry really, back in, March and April, were really changing the tone to have, if you recall, and it actually kind of interestingly enough to me got some negative press on it, but having that empathetic tone of, we're all in this together. When we thought it was going to be the 14 days to slow the spread, and then it continued on and continued on and continued on. We really all had to get together and say, hey, look, if we do this together, we can conquer this thing. And I think a lot of brands changed message to that tone. But I think over time, as things have started to open up, and I saw this very much with the real estate transaction, was how do you make sure that your customer is safe and that they feel safety? Because everyone, and I still feel that this is today, even in the folks that I talk to, and as we talk about 2021 and what, events might look like for our membership down the road and things like that, how do you ensure that wherever somebody is on the spectrum of whether they're not really worried about COVID for wrong or for right, or they're super worried about COVID, or they may be, high risk or what have you, how does a brand really ensure that if that customer, that client is going to be either coming into their place of business or doing business with somebody, that they are going to feel as safe as they need to feel safe? So in real estate, we've seen that with adjusting to virtual tours and really doing transactions almost 100% virtually. So that's on one end of the spectrum. Having different kits and things for their clients to go out so they can put a mask on, put gloves on, have sanitizer, make sure that the house has been cleaned. So, and, as we go into retail stores as well, making sure that those retailers are maintaining that 6-foot distance between people, and or limiting the number of people that are coming into the store. I think one brand comes to mind that when I have gone to the few times that I've gone to the mall, Lululemon kind of has you make an appointment to be able to come in to assure that they're only going to have so many people. And, that irritates some people that they have to wait so long to, it's not a regular shopping trip, but it's ensuring the safety of those people who are in there at that particular time, which I think is just something that brands have got to make sure that they are covering their bases and cognizant of that real spectrum of feelings and emotions, and making sure that they're meeting those folks, at that place of emotion.
Those are great points. And I think it's what customers are looking for from brands. And it's great that Remax is delivering it. How do you see that translating on the realtor side and broker? Because Remax has done some great things on that side to enable that connection to that customer segment as well, and they're really your customers as well. So could you talk more about how you're connecting with the realtor side?
Yeah, definitely. So over the course of the last probably, and I'm glad that we were starting this, no one knew what was going to happen come March of this year, but starting last year, again, going back to kind of my core of foundationally with my family being in the business and seeing those relationships firsthand, obviously media has changed so much. So how do we put tools in the hands of our agents and brokers where they can easily be themselves, but easily communicate and keep in touch with their clients? So we've created different tools. I think last time I was on here, I talked about an app that we were using called Photify. It's a great app that is for content that you can easily be then shared out on different social media platforms. It's automatically adjusts to whatever the specifications are within that platform. It can be generic, it can be branded. So we put that tool in the hands of our brokers and agents. We also had created, and that was, Photify is something, we also have a strategy where we either partner with or we develop. And so Photify was something that was already created, great tool. So we partnered with them. Then on the kind of build it side, what we did realize a lot throughout the last couple of years, especially as digital media has grown, is that a lot of our agents, whether it be Google or Facebook advertising or whatever, we're kind of cannibalizing each other and therefore raising the costs. So we developed a platform called Megaphone, which gives insights for us to be able to let our agents kind of know where the best places to go for them are based off of what their goals and objectives. Gives them access through a company called HomeSnap for Google, Facebook, Waze, advertising, and then also gives them access to a DSP through a company called Centro, where they can go out and run their own digital campaigns. Gives us a view at the national level where we can help give insights back so that they're not wasting a dollar. They're making sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck, and just giving them more insights into what they're doing on a digital level. So those have all been things. We've also over the years, something that's not new, but we continue to iterate, is a design center. So again, it allows them to automate listing feeds coming in, so it automatically sends them a video on a property, but just really trying to take them away from having to do the dirty work and get in the weeds with the work, and allowing them to go list and sell, or whatever information their clients need, because that's really what they are, as the market expert.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because it's all about making it convenient for all your customers, so they can really focus on what they need to get done. So that's a great way that Max differentiates itself in the minds of its customers. But Remax is one of the most recognized real estate brands in the U.S. today. How do you think Remax really stands out from the crowd and differentiates itself in the minds of all its customers? So you talked to some of those things, but to build that brand recognition, you've actually set the foundation and done a lot of work. Could you speak a little bit more to that as well?
Yeah, so I think it's a couplefold, because we are really a B2B to C. You know, we have our direct customers, our franchisee or our broker owner, and then they have the agents, and then the agents have the consumer. So, you know, at the broad level with just consumer awareness, I'll start with that. That's really everything we do at the national and local level with our advertising funds. So, you know, we continue, and this is one thing I actually was talking about with some of the team this morning is, you know, we talked so much over the last couple of years, we've heard so much of, oh my gosh, you know, traditional media is dead and everything needs to go digitally. And what's happened over time is those traditional vehicles such as TV have just evolved. I mean, I think people are watching, as we've seen during the pandemic, more television than ever. They're just watching it differently. So whether it's addressable TV or CTV or OTT, all of these different tactics are still very effective in driving that brand awareness, which I still would argue is at the center of building a good brand awareness campaign, because nothing kind of explains your brand and gives emotion to your brand as much as a video ad that can show sight, sound, and emotion. And it gives you 30 seconds to actually get that message across. So I still feel very strongly about that. It's just in a very different way than buying your day parts and spots and dots. And that I would say is, you know, kind of the old school way of doing it. There are much better ways to do it. So that's one way. And then obviously we do the digital advertising as well. The good chunk of our budget goes to that. But then again, it's, you know, I look at this as we have 135,000 agents throughout the globe. And these tools that we give them, they're all, I mean, most of them are branded. They can choose to do some unbranded, but they love the brand and they want to support the brand. But I look at it as, how do we engage those 135,000, what I would call brand ambassadors, to spread that message even more? So it doesn't fall all within the brand's back, but it's creating those brand ambassadors and those that really want to, you know, further the brand and get the brand message out. That's where I feel our opportunity is even further. We've tapped into that, but I think throughout 2021, especially since all the learnings that they've had as individuals as well during the pandemic, I think they see what value is brought to them, not just by these different tools, but the content within those tools as well.
Yeah, and one constant theme I'm hearing here, Abby, is that there's a lot of innovation going on at with your team and at Remax, and that's sort of new in real estate. And I think a lot of things have gotten forward because of the pandemic. Can you speak to how you foster a culture of innovation at Remax and some of the initiatives that have come out of that, fostering that innovation? And also, what are some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome to launch some of those new initiatives?
Sure. Well, I'll kind of take it from a cultural angle if I could, because
Sure.
Starting back probably about, 2018, I'll go back a little further. The year before that, 2016, 2017, we launched a second franchise model called Motto Mortgage. So then, before that, it was just Remax, the real estate company. Then we added Motto Mortgage as our mortgage arm for our brokers and our franchisees. But in 2018, we made an acquisition of a company called Bouge. And they are a technology company that we acquired to start building out most of our technology. So they started with our CRM, things like that, .com, the new Remax.com, consumer app, things like that. So we started making these acquisitions. And since 2018, we've now had 4 acquisitions. We acquired Bouge, and then a company called First.io, which is actually an app that our agents can go into, upload their contacts, and then it actually gives them ratings on their contacts about who's more likely to buy or sell in the next coming months. They can actually also see what deals they've lost. So if someone their contacts has done a deal, done a transaction, they actually start taking a look at what commission they've actually lost out on. And then we've had a couple more this year of a company called Gadberry, which is a data company out of Arkansas. And then on the Motto side, a company called Weemlo. So we've made a lot of innovations. A lot of it's around first-party data. As you can tell, obviously, First is a first-party data company. Gadberry, back when we purchased or acquired Booge, we also started a data arm of Remax called 73, which is now what all the MLSs filter through. So we have all of that first, data for ourselves for first party. So as you can see, there was a huge transition from just being a traditional kind of franchisor, helping our brokers and agents, to building out kind of this support system of technology. That was a huge, strategic directional change for us, but it also did have, it's also a cultural change for us. You go from just being a franchisor to also having all these underpinnings of technology, and technology and real estate aren't always the same cultures in companies. So mirroring the two of those and then prioritizing, I think, all the things that we want to do from a technology perspective to support Motto and Remax, because that's the acquisitions are 100% to support and grow out, whether it be more data in remax.com or more data for First to give them more insights. So I think that's been the biggest innovation over the last couple years, which I think has put us in a really good position today. Also, I would think a challenge because it's grown our headquarters staff from about 250 to 300 to close to 600. And especially during this pandemic, when we're not in the office, kind of getting that, keeping that culture. I will tell you, our COO, our CEO, Adam Contos, and our Chief Customer Officer on the Remax side, Nick Bailey, and our President on the Motto side, Ward Morrison, and our CFO and our COO have done a fantastic job of trying to keep the culture, because we have a very, very strong entrepreneurial culture. But that has been a challenge. You meet a new coworker. I've probably hired 5 people in my org via Zoom this year, which, can't wait to give them a big hug and just say, so glad that you're a part of the team. That's going to be down the road. But all of those things, just kind of having that shift to focus on the technology support system that we have. And then also what that's done kind of just to the culture, I think has been a challenge. I think probably one of the greater ones that we've had this year.
How do you, because I know from everything I've read and heard, Remax is very big on the culture, the connections. And as you said before, the industry is all about relationships. So how with people spread out, people sort of in different places, how do you keep that culture going? You talked about some of the things, but what's important and how do you bring people together?
Well, I hate to use the word Zoom, but we try to do a lot of fun things via Zoom, especially I'll speak specifically to my team. We try to do a lot. We did a great trivia. This is for anyone who's looking to do a team builder. And I'll have to post the name up or send it to you guys. But our VP of communications got this company that ran this whole trivia, and then we got broken out into groups, which was great because it mixed up the team. Since I do have marketing and communications, it's, sometimes and especially now, they work so much more in their own silos as opposed to cross-functionally as we used to in the office. That things like that have been a great kind of just fun thing to do, to kind of, let's take work out of it for a second and let's just have a little fun and get to know each other. So those things have been really fun to do.
That's awesome. I'm going to drill down a little bit more into sort of the technology investments you've made and how data is very important. How do you see data and the insights you can derive from data and analytics really driving really transforming advertising and marketing in the industry?
Oh gosh, well, it cannot be underestimated at all. I mean, data is, for us now, data is everything. I mean, we are such a data-driven marketing organization. And actually, I'll tell you, we just recently, last year, switched media agencies, and one of the biggest reasons was they use a company called Buxton. I don't know if anyone has heard of Buxton, but gives great insights into down to the hyper local, even the zip code level of consumer behavior and data. And so that's everything for us because, my background, media buying 101 was, you buy on efficiency, you buy on cost per point, cost per thousand. And that's kind of how you regulate it. It was very demo based as opposed now it's people based. You're really looking at that individual person. And my team will tell you ad nauseum, our 100% goal. And if we haven't done this, we've failed. It's the right message at the right time to the right person. So you have to know who that person is. You have to know what the message is they're seeking. And you have to know if it's the right time for them. So with all the data that you can compile, you can understand where they might be. I'm just going to, in the real estate transaction per se, are they in the looking phase? Are they in the research phase? Are they in the I'm looking for an agent phase? And just using that as an example, you can then go create the messaging and segment the messaging to make sure that that right message is coming to that right person at the right time. And it's just so huge. I mean, it used to be marketing was such a gut feeling and gut reaction. Data shouldn't be scary. It should give you comfort that you're directionally doing the right thing. You might find just based off of different, testing of creative and things like that you might be off here or there. But again, data allows you to move on the fly and make those corrections. So instead of doing a year-long campaign where you're just kind of going out and saying, here's our campaign for the year, and you don't really know if you're missing the boat on it or you're off tone to somebody, data gives you all that insights just to make better decisions. So for us, it's huge. And as we continue to grow our ecosystem of data streams, whether it be through 73 or First or Bouge, it's just going to give us more and more first-party data that we'll rely more heavily on.
And how do I think one of the challenges usually to be able to react real time or as close to real time to the data you're getting is kind of connecting all the pieces, right? So your internal teams, your agencies, your vendors. Yep. And that's, I think, continues to be a challenge for a lot of organizations is how do you connect all the pieces and collect the data, but make sure whatever you're deriving are actionable insights. And how do you enable that at Remax? Because I think that would be a question that everybody's asking.
Yeah, so it's for us, it's on a couple different levels. So I'll say, yes, we rely heavily. We have a creative agency, we have a media agency. We also have a very strong in-house, both media team and creative team and digital team. And that's all within my org. And then, so that's very important to have. It's very important not just to rely on your agency, but to also, and sometimes their data can be off and you might say, I don't agree with that. We also have as we built out Bouge and things like that, we also have a very strong BI department at Remax, which looks at a lot of different things with our first party data. So they can actually, not only do we feed that off to the agencies, but they can also give us insights that then our internal team. So that would be one thing that, I love our agencies, don't get me wrong, but definitely have teams within your organization that can take a look at that data. You are going to know your business better than any agency ever will. So all that you have to be able to take their data and kind of scrub it for what you know about your business, but you're also going to have to explain data back out to your agencies to help them make better decisions. Because again, I said it, but I can't reiterate this enough. No agency is going to know your business better than you are. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's what we're seeing is that brands are increasingly taking ownership of not only the strategic planning, but the data bit, the data part, and really making sure they're providing the right direction and success measures to their agencies. I'm going to pivot a little bit and I think we can all agree that this year has been one of continuous disruption, but that has created the need to be more nimble and creative. And really, as we talked about before, Abby, really think about the art of the possible.
Right.
Can you share your perspective on how the relationship between brands and customers has changed, and how companies need to adapt now and into the future to continue to grow customer expectations?
Yeah, I think, and I'll use a couple different examples that that I've seen. I mean, I think we had, going into the pandemic, we probably had throughout the world, we had some agents, real estate agents, who were utilizing different technologies in order to do virtual showings, listings, things like that. But I don't think anyone ever got to the point where they thought that maybe for 6 months to a year, that's how they would be operating business, let alone, mortgage companies, title companies, figuring out how to do their part of the transaction. I don't know that we can always foresee what's going to be ahead of us, but thinking about I think you said this, thinking about what might be possible. Do I have and again, going back pre-March, had an agent said last year, you know what, maybe in 2020, I'm going to spend more time trying to show homes, especially if someone's out of town or something like that, via a virtual tour. Or I'm going to use 3D simulation on a listing to get them to kind of see it. Maybe they still want to go see it at the end of the road, but maybe you've then eliminated contacts from different people. All of these things were available, before COVID. It wasn't as if someone created a virtual tour, in March. It was there. So maybe experimenting and trying out different technologies that are out there, whether you actually put them into practice right away, at least you're understanding what is available to you, how it might impact a customer, maybe test it out with your clients and say, well, how do you feel about this? Would you do business this way? We don't know, again, what's ahead of us, but at least we know the technologies that are out there that might allow us to adapt faster than I think we were prepared for this time around.
That's great. And the theme of the uncertainties of 2020, can you share a positive outcome or opportunity you've seen emerge from all this uncertainty? And I know you talked about there's the deepening of the relationships, but I'm sure there's been some other moments that you can share as well.
Well, I think personally, part of our culture at RE/MAX was because we're a very relationship company. We enjoy each other immensely. We're coworkers and we're friends and we enjoy working together. And that's just kind of the culture that Dave and Gail Linegar built. So that was a big struggle to not be with everybody every day. So I'll put that there. On the alternative side of that, we also weren't a very work from home friendly company at all. And in fact, even kind of, I think our founder and our CEO were, as this happened, they're like, okay, we'll probably be back in the office in another month. Let's, whatever. But I think it's proven to them and proven to all of us that we can be just as productive at home with some balance. Because I loved what I think it was Marlene who was before us, loved what she was saying about balance and things like that, because I think that that's incredibly difficult to maintain and to achieve at home. But that's been one thing that's really come out of this, and quite frankly may turn the way that we hire people in the future. So before, because we were so much kind of an at the office environment, really we're in Denver. That was kind of our sphere of where we would hire from. And not saying we don't have great talent here, but especially as we talk about technologies and things and different strategies, being able to hire anywhere in the country or really anywhere in the world, I think allows us for so much more flexibility with the talent that we can get and achieve. So I think that's been a real positive just for me professionally and personally. My kids are grown, so I don't have the same challenges, bless every single parent who is, having the homeschool the kids, and because really truly I know a lot is on those parents. But, I think for some, it's been a good, just kind of a little bit more flexibility on work-life balance, from just having to work just in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah, and just based on kind of that discussion, extending it out, what drivers or trends do you see as impacting the future of real estate services and products, looking into 2021, but also beyond?
It's a great question. I think I think this virtual trend is going to continue, especially, and I think it piggybacks off of what I just said, is I think people are realizing that they also don't have to live in the state where they're employed. So I do think that people will be, I've had a ton of friends who have now purchased a home, in the mountains or at the beach. And, they're coming from Chicago or from Denver or from wherever. They're not necessarily there. So I think that virtual trend is going to continue. I still think the real estate agent is going to be at the core of that. And they might even become even more essential to the transaction, because there's really going to be a trust factor of the relationship building, and then the consumer trusting that the agent knows what they're looking for. Some of our ad campaign for 2021 is going to kind of address those types of scenarios. But I see that innovation becoming more and more prevalent in the marketplace.
And before I open questions from the audience, any final thoughts, recommendations, or words of wisdom for our audience, Abby?
I would say use whatever data you have available to you, because it will help you make smarter decisions. The right message at the right time to the right people. If you're not doing that, you're going to, potentially be off-putting to some of your audience, and obviously you don't want that. But utilize technology, see what's out there, use the data to support your marketing decisions. And also I'd say, don't be afraid to try something and fail, because you're going to have to, in this world, iterate, and things are going to change quickly. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there, try something, and just know that every fail is a lesson learned to help you succeed in the future.
That's a great point. And increasingly, I think companies are sort of behind, let's experiment fast, let's learn. And, whether it's a failure or a success, we're learning from that and growing. Here's one of the questions from the audience. The question is, increasingly business and technology innovations are required to continue to deliver customer value, but also drive revenue growth. How do you make sure you're extracting the maximum value from your data and marketing technology investments to create the right customer experiences? Abby, you talked about some of the technology you've invested in, but how do you sort of identify the gaps in that technology stack, and how do you sort of move forward with determining whether you build or buy or partner?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that we've done in the past probably 6 months is actually developed consumer personas. So when we talk about things, we talk about, and I'm probably making up names here, but Betty the buyer and Richard the renter and Holly the homeowner. And we've kind of developed, based on our data of what they're looking for, kind of developed that persona, so that every decision that we're making, we're asking ourselves in that decision making and that strategy conversation, is this what Betty is going to want? Is Betty the buyer going to want this technology? I'll give you, an example. One thing, we did some research a couple years ago. Actually, it was just about a year ago. And one thing that homeowners overwhelmingly say that they would love to have is, more insights and more transparency into the transaction itself. So what technology could you build to really, there are different people that are within the transaction. You've got the mortgage lender, you've got the title company, coordinators, transaction coordinators. So where on that kind of Domino's pizza line, pizza tracker, how can you develop something where there's more transparency to the consumer? They take more control. And those are the types of things that we look at, of not just research, but then taking that research into the personas and saying, is that something that, Betty would want or Richard would want? Hopefully that answers.
Great. That's a great way to do it. I think that's all the time we have for today. I think we've tackled a couple of questions from the audience, and Abby, you've provided a lot of insights into how your team runs and how Remax runs. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time. Emily, back to you.
Yes, thank you guys so much. I absolutely loved hearing, Abby, about your 3 generations of family all in the same business. It's so inspiring, and we're so happy to have you guys close out today's live cast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Well, and thank you all.